Alright, welcome back to the second part of the Dawn of War Retrospective. Today we're talking about the first expansion to the original base game, Dawn of War Winter Assault. This is an interesting one because while being called an expansion, this is so big it constitutes basically its own entire game. There's an entire 12 mission campaign split into two separate stories. There's Order, where you play as the Eldar and the entirely new army to the game Imperial Guard, and Disorder, where you play as the Orcs and Forces of Chaos. That's right, this is a rare Warhammer 40,000 game where you don't actually play as the Space Marines in the main campaign, outside of getting to use them in one of the final missions, which is a nice change of pace as someone who's gone through a lot of them, really appreciated the few games where they're not main campaign characters. And really, this new campaign and the new army is the real draw, so let's take a look at the former. On the winter planet of Lorn 5, once ruled by the Imperium, the taint of chaos is rooted deep. Having taken over the planet from its original owners, the Chaos Space Marines face against the divided Orc warbands, while the Imperial Guard arrive, led by General Stern to reclaim the world and retrieve an ancient titan, a war machine of mankind's ancient past possessing immeasurable power. Meanwhile, the Eldar have also come to the world. Their intentions are known to all, as even their presence remains in the shadows. But that's just the basic plot gist. We'll take this one by one with the stories that are told, beginning with Order. Upon Lorn 5, the Imperium of Man arrived to reclaim the world and their titan. General Stern sends his troops out to take a critical defense fortress, struggling as they are faced with a foul demon gate, which they struggle to break through. However, just when they need them, and as always when they never want them, the Eldar craft world Ulthwé oversees the battle and assists the Imperials from the shadows, taking out the generators powering the gate and slaying the sorcerer behind it all, led by their Farseer, Taldir the Dreamer. Though the guardsmen accept their fortune, Stern remains suspicious of the demon gate's mysterious destruction. He doesn't get long to think though, as suddenly the Imperials hear a distress call from a Space Marine chaplain, Brother Varnus of the Ultramarines chapter, the greatest and most illustrious of the Astartes. The Imperials learn that the Ultramarines carry with them the crew of the buried Titan, and were shot out from the sky as they arrive to land, falling into enemy territory. General Stern rallies and sends his troops to rescue the Ultramarines, assisted once more by the Eldar distracting the Orcs and destroying an artillery unit that pinned the Guardsmen down. When the Guardsmen arrive, the Ultramarines have remained steadfast and strong, holding the line on their own even against a greater demon of Khorne. Chaplain Varnus single-handedly defeating and slaying the Bloodthirster in combat. Badass. Together, the Space Marines and Imperial Guard prepare to transport the Titan's crew to their vessel. The Eldar, however, are faced with an Orc horde of a size that they are not prepared for, needing to protect the mysterious stone within their webway assembly that will strike down an unnamed threat the Eldar prepare to face. The Eldar slay an Orc leader and immediately make their escape, transporting their base between multiple locations to avoid the massive Orc swarm. However, the Eldar are unable to survive on their own. Taldir contacts General Stern after this random guy with a sniper rifle blows the brains out of one of their bone singers for no reason. Taldir requests Stern's assistance, and he hesitantly agrees for his own reasons. Though the two strike up an uneasy alliance based heavily in mistrust and disdain, the Guardsmen nonetheless arrive to assist the Eldar in their battle. The Eldar intend to use the Guardsmen to ensure the protection of the assembly in return for information on an oncoming threat and strange readings the Guardsmen do not fully understand. The Guardsmen, meanwhile, merely intend to keep their eye on the Eldar and ensure that they are always within view. The Eldar tell the Guardsmen that the oncoming threat are known as the Necrons, an ancient race of mechanical beings so old that they predate all that exists within the material world. Wielding ancient technology, the Necrons are an unstoppable wave of metal men who had their sentience and identity stripped from them by the Catan Stargons, and now they awaken once more in the modern day to strip the universe of life and reclaim the full glory of their empire. It is here that the Eldar and the Imperium continue their alliance only briefly, as the two now need to get through to the Titan's remains for their own purposes, blocked by a gate held tight by the forces of Orcs and Chaos. Here the player is given the choice to either have the Eldar or Imperium succeed. That's right, there are multiple endings for each story. Should you choose the Imperium's path, they will successfully escort a Land Raider carrying the crew to the Titan, and fortify the location alongside the Ultramarines. Here, General Stern and Brother Varnus hold the line with their troops, repairing the Titan with a series of thermoplasmic generators. However, descending from space, the Necrons arrive. 6 monoliths carrying legions of the unstoppable metal force upon them. Weaponizing the Titan's armaments, the Guardsmen manage to destroy the monoliths and win the day. Varnus praises the Guardsman unit, as second only to his own brothers among those he has fought beside. With the main forces against him destroyed, the Imperium of Man march on to reclaim Lorn 5. However, should you choose to have the Eldar win, they will teleport their webway assembly to the Titan, defended behind the Psychic Gate. They now prepare for war, what the Eldar believe may be this craftworld's final battle against their ancient foes. In a moment, the Soul Stone within the assembly annihilates the one Necron monolith that has ascended, only for 5 more to arrive and prepare for battle. Taldir summons forth the Avatar of Cain and strikes an alliance once more with General Stern. asking to take control of the Titan's weapons to stop the Necrons, and allowing the Imperium to keep the Titan after they're done. Rallied by the might of the War God's avatar and unleashing the full might of their Soulstorm and the Imperium's finest weapons, they succeed in repelling the Necron threat. However, the Titan overloads from the way in which it was used and ruptures. The Eldar craft world leaves the planet they're on as the Titan explodes, destroyed and never usable again. That is the Order campaign, and it's really solid. Really, each level has its own completely unique feel, and due to the shorter length of the game, it feels much faster paced, while somehow not making me feel, is that it in the end? Likely because while there's the same total amount of levels as the original game, the two separate stories with two endings feels more complete and whole, and grants greater satisfaction. Winter Assault also has way more difficulty. While I never really struggled in Dawn of War, this game I actually lost a few times, and honestly anyone who played the game probably knows where. Level 4 of Order. This is an escort mission, and one I think surprisingly is actually a lot of fun. Just only once when you actually have an idea what you're doing. See, unlike most escort missions I've played in video games, what you're escorting isn't a little piece of shit, but the second most powerful vehicle in the game, and you have some level of control over it. Mapping out your own path of choice and figuring out the best way to go can be fun, and once you've got a handle on it, not even that hard. Plus, there's something surprisingly raw about getting the two strongest vehicles in the game on the same side backing each other up. But even then, other levels I also end up making some pretty big mistakes and barely skating through. And yet it never felt like the game's fault, it was mine. I was given the resources and I just used them wrong. And yet just barely I was able to rethink my strategy. Most notably on level 3, where I was getting swarmed and lost my troops and changed to focus on repairing my main asset while using my commander to distract enemies to take the win. And that feeling of victory was so sweet. Overall, Order is a solid campaign that's very fun. Now let's talk about Disorder. As the Orc clan struggle in their divided state to match the might of Chaos, they suddenly find themselves banded together under the rule of Orc war boss Gorgut's Headhunter, claiming them through a combination of his brute force and intelligence, rallying up and decimating a Chaos base with his new army. And then Gorgut's plane crashes and he gets really pissed off about it. Here we meet Lord Krull, a brainless gibbon of Chaos following their blood god Khorne. Krull is told of Gorguts and decides to eliminate him for sport. Rallying the boys, Gorguts goes off to make sure this doesn't happen, and the two forces of Chaos and the Orc War engage until Gorguts is defeated and to be executed. Then, however, the Imperium of Man arrive. The Orcs and Chaos Space Marines don't really make an alliance, but they do decide to cease their battle with one another and strike the Guardsmen on both sides. Upon succeeding, they wring information from the lone surviving Guardsman and learn of the Titan Dominatus. And then Krull caves the guy's skull upside his ass. Now the Orcs and Chaos form an alliance to annihilate the Imperial Guardsmen and then finish their battle with one another. The Orcs march and they manage to slay General Stern and leave the Guardsmen broken. With that done, the forces of Chaos decide to just get a bunch of blood for the Titan or something? Krull also tells his sorcerer to kill a Chaos Space Marine who did nothing. And after collecting a ton of Guardsmen sacrifices, the Eldar then just appear and also summon an avatar of Cain? Which is the first time the Eldar probably even show up in this. So, then the sorcerer becomes a bloodthirster and slays the avatar. But apparently these used up too much blood and they cannot appease Khorne. Okay. Now the Orcs and Chaos both choose to strike and claim the Titan for themselves. Here you make your choice. On essentially the same last two maps as the Order campaign. However, you do get to play on the other side and fuck up the Space Marine convoy in the Eldar base. Regardless, as the Eldar and Imperium of Man hold the line to the bitter end, the player can choose which side gets the Titan. Should Chaos get through, they perform another blood ritual to activate the Titan's defenses and eliminates the Necrons they've just appeared, and that's it. I guess Gorguts' War turns in when he single-handedly fights them all, but... However, should the Orcs succeed, they don't bother with the Titan. The Orc War take out Imperial forces and go on a rampage to lure out Krull, Gorguts wanting to end his life and claim the last head of worth for his pointy stick. They damage the Titan, and Krull appears to face them, only for the Necrons to interrupt their battle. Unleashing the full might of his War one last time, Gorgut slays the Guardsmen, slays the Necrons, and at last slays Krull. And in his final moments of the story, Gorgut can only wonder, what's the closest nearby world to ravage? So if you might have noticed, I'm really not that into the Chaos storyline. While the Orc story remains pretty cool, with Gorguts rallying his boys and building an army that can ravage all, the Chaos side is just weird. Krull doesn't really have a proper reason to be on the world in the first place, and he clearly doesn't like being here. I also just don't like how Eldar are done for the campaign. While in the Order campaign, we get introduced to the enemy forces of Chaos and Orcs right away, and we get an idea of what's up with them, enough to know why they're fighting, but not know so much that Disorder leaves nothing to explain. The Disorder campaign does that for the Guardsmen, but then the Eldar just show up with an avatar for some reason. It's weird. Back on Chaos though, each army has some sort of gimmick that they play on at points in the story. Guardsmen will have to move through their buildings' underground tunnels, the Orcs build up massive swarms, and Eldar are all about mobility and being sneaky to evade and strike. While with Chaos, it's these two really boring missions about slowly clearing the way and getting one slow cunt to pick up a squad of sacrifices. You escort them to a place, but also, if your guy gets too far away, then they stop mind controlling their victims and the victims return to normal. And if this happens when they're in your base, they'll get gunned down by your own fucking troops and you won't have time to get them back. They also automatically make everyone target them as well for some reason. And it's just such a slow and painful process. It's not even difficult, it's just tedious. Every other army is great, their final missions are cool, and the way their relic units come out is great. The Guardsman's relic unit, the Baneblade, shows up when they're in a bind. It's the cavalry to save them in their time of need. And later it comes through 2 Mars pattern commands in really badass situations, either as the prize for saving a base or the solo escort defense for the escort. Eldar only get the avatar of Cain probably in the final level, and is treated with such reverence as to be an actual objective. This is the moment where the Eldar decide no more running. It's time for war, bring forth the war god's might. The Orcs get the Squiggles in the first level, and it's played as a tactical move from Gorguts to get the strongest things he can as soon as possible to hold his position of power. It's less badass, but it's still fun. The Bloodthirster though, you just have at the end of a boring mission a bit where you stand there for 2 minutes as some pretty easy to stop forces come at you, and then the Bloodthirster shows up. But then instead of actually getting to use the Bloodthirster, you just walk up to the avatar, press a button, and the mission ends. You only really get the Bloodthirster to use in the final level where it's optional and it's already shown up, so it has less impact and it's kind of ineptly lame. I don't even think Chaos needed to be this pointless either. The Necrons show up out of nowhere in the Disorder campaign. It's awkward and stupid if you play Disorder first, which you can do by the way. It's not like it's an unlockable story. You can choose to play this before Order if you just prefer Orcs and Chaos. But if you prefer Orcs and Chaos, you will be punished in terms of not knowing anything about what's actually happening. The Order campaign gives you enough to know what's going on, but also hints that there is something more with the Chaos and Orcs. However, in Disorder, you really don't get that, you just get confused. I think it would have been better if Krull was aware of the Necrons' approach, and he wanted to claim the artifacts of Khorne on the world before the Necrons made it inaccessible. Then when Krull learns of the Titan, he thinks, oh, that's a good way to fight off the Necrons and retain the world for the Blood God. Instead, he's just an idiot. It really feels sadly like the Disorder campaign was just an extra bit they tacked on. It's still good, the levels are fun for the most part, and a lot of it's still really nice to play, but the Disorder campaign feels either like it was meant to be unlockable, but they just forgot to do that, or like it was tacked on, and I don't like that. Overall though, the campaign does have a lot to it. It has more substance and story beats and cool moments than the first game. It's only really let down by Chaos' side of things. I think it's actually genuinely better than Dawn of War's vanilla version in terms of level design, difficulty, and pacing. I do think it has a weaker cast though. I think Gorguts is the only major improvement over the vanilla war boss, as he's a really cool character who combines the funny and serious moments of the Orcs into a genuine threat, who's more tactical and powerful while still having his goofy moments. But I think Angelos is a more interesting character than Stern, even if I like Stern quite a bit. I think Taldir and Marka are roughly equal. I think Isidore and Varnus are pretty equal, though they're also very different. I think Bale and Sindri are way better than Krull's stupid ass, and I think overall I prefer the cast of the original. However, Winter Assault's campaign is still very good, but there is the question of what parts of it are canon, as I don't think we've ever had that confirmed. And I'm sure some people are wondering, no, these endings can't all be canon, so which one is? Well, we know Disorders can't be canon, as Taldir has to survive the events of the game to appear later, and Gorguts kills her in the Orc ending. Gorguts also dies in the Chaos ending, which he doesn't in canon. So it has to be either Eldar or Guardsman. Personally, I believe it's the Eldar's ending that's canon. It makes the most sense that the Eldar and Guardsman form a tentative alliance and that costs them the Titan Dominatus, but they do stop the Necrons. Additionally, we know that Gorguts has to kill Krull and take his head canonically, so that part of the Orc ending is likely canon as well. As is the entire first level and second level of Disorder, where Gorguts forms his War and Chaos learn of the Titan. Anyway, that's enough story. How's the actual game? Now in terms of gameplay, it remains mostly the same. However, every army is given an extra tier to their tech tree, another upgrade they all need to make to get their higher stuff. I don't know why this was done, maybe it's for balance, but it does just sort of exist. Each army also has new units, and there's a whole new army, so let's go through them one by one. Space Marines. For the most part, the Space Marines are unchanged. They're barely in the story, so their only real new unit is the Chaplain, a powerful melee commander with a really cool design. Aside from that, there's really nothing beyond the global tech tree tier add-on. Eldar. The Eldar also remain basically the same, but they did get one incredibly important unit, the Fire Dragons. This gives the Eldar the one proper specialized infantry unit they lacked in the original game, an anti-vehicle and anti-building squad. It's a godsend in my eyes, though not entirely necessary, I'm aware, due to the Wraith Lord's Bright Lance upgrade and the Bright Lance platforms. Orcs. Orcs gained the Mega Armor knobs. They're alright. While they do a lot of damage, they suffer to an extent from being really fucking slow normally and damaging themselves when you speed them up. And they have morale that seems to drop really fast. For the most part, this squad's role is to give Gorguts a number 2 in the story. Chaos Space Marines. The Chaos Space Marines have a few differences more than the rest. Not only do they lose a good deal of their upgrades, with Chaos Space Marines no longer getting the full set of available heavy weapons, and Chaos Predators no longer being able to outfit themselves with heavy anti-vehicle artillery, they do also gain access to the Khorne Berserkers, who fulfill the role of a heavy melee unit that they previously lacked, giving them a counterpart to the Space Marine Assault Terminator without being a carbon copy, and also being much weaker and much easier to get out. It also feels like it has a more fitting lore reason, as this Chaos Army, well, it's a servant of the Blood God, so having the Blood God's units makes the most sense. It does make the horrors a bit weird though, because there are different gods' demons, but we'll let that slide, as they probably didn't want to make the army weaker by taking something away. Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard are the new army on the block, the second Imperium of Man army playable, and one that is very different to the Space Marines, though they do kind of combine elements from the Space Marines along with the Eldar and Orcs. On one hand, the original units suck on their own. They're weak in armor, weak in weapons, but with a lot of individuals that are cheap to make and quick to come up. They can produce massive 15-man squads that cost almost nothing but also die really quickly. They also have a few elite units in the form of Ogryn and Kasrkin, but they're hardly amongst the best infantry the game has. Truly the best infantry the army has is its commander, General Stern, who is uniquely a command squad, who can outfit himself with a squadron of up to 4 other commander units to fight beside him, which themselves can be pumped out from the main base in huge numbers. They also have a form of the Eldar's mobility. Any building of theirs has underground routes to one another. While this doesn't have quite the same ability as the webway gates, as they can't transport as quickly, it still works really well. It can get your guardians from point A to point B much quicker. However, do keep in mind this only transports infantry, and those are not the backbone of the guard. Really, the true power of the army is their artillery. The guardsmen have probably the best vehicles in the game. Well, not the best walkers. Sentinels are pretty different from the rest and would lose a one-on-one battle with any other walker, but the guardsmen have the best transport vehicle, the Chimera, able to carry multiple squadrons and allow them all to still fire their guns from within the safety of it. They have a fantastic Hellhound tank that is great for clearing large infantry groups, the insanely long-range and powerful Basilisk artillery platform, and the Baneblade, the single strongest vehicle in the game, as well as the Leman Russ, which, humorously, because the Orcs had the looter tank, is a vehicle that belongs to the Guardsmen that was first playable with the Orcs. When playing the Guard, primarily what I do is get large squadrons of Guardsmen to hold the line defensively and build up resources, so that I can get my big gun tanks out and primarily use those to both soak up damage and also deal damage, with the main units as support. But the Guardsmen offer many ways to play, and they're really fun if used right. Though don't get too upset if you drop something and need to pick it up, and then 3 seconds later when you look back to the screen you find an entire squad's been wiped out by some Space Marines looking at them funny. Past that, I want to bring up a few things I forgot to mention in part 1 of my retrospective. The sound design and music for one. The music for Dawn of War is incredible, namely the main theme of each game being distinct and befitting, but also each army has its own theme that's just incredible. Space Marines have an equal parts heroic and militaristic sound, befitting the way the Imperium of Man views them as the Angels of the Emperor, holy biblical figures of epic magnitude, a theme befitting how grand the Astartes truly are as the pride of the Imperium of Man. A song that makes one feel patriotic for a nation that doesn't exist. No better a song can exist to represent the power and majesty of the Space Marines in equal measure. Matching that is a similarly patriotic theme of the Imperial Guard. While the Space Marines theme represents an unmatched force of divine power, the Guardsman represents the force of will held in the soul of mortal men. It's a militaristic song that lets you feel both the soul of a mortal man willing to lay down his life in service of his people, as well as the sheer power of the tanks that support his position. Chaos Marines have a suspenseful theme, like that of darkness waiting in the shadows for its opportunity, a perverse, shadowy theme belying an underlying sinisterness. It sounds so eerie and foreboding, like the music directly before the arrival of the final boss that shows up after the final boss you expect. Until suddenly the music shifts to a faster pace, like the demon has finally shown himself. It's a perfect theme for chaos that matches them flawlessly. The Orcs theme sounds overwhelming and primitive, like a song less befitting an army and more befitting a force of nature, a natural disaster oncoming. The foreboding sound of unbridled battle lust heading your way. It's heavy and impactful like the Orcs themselves, with heavy percussion and drums perfectly matching the impact the Orcs have as a group. Arguably my favorite though is the Eldar theme. It's so eerie and ethereal, waves of mystery, and an enigmatic song, like an ancient tune that heralds divine power inconceivable, a supernatural whisper of music that matches a race that cannot truly be understood, like an eldritch being of ambiguous morality, neither evil nor good, merely a force that is. A song that lets you understand one simple fact: the Eldar can never truly be understood, for their ancient existence is so historic as to be lost to the whims of time. Beyond that though, the sound design is fantastic. Ambient noise helps to add a good feeling of atmosphere, but also the sound effects for each army's weaponry and the vehicle sounds distinct and fitting. From the powerful bolters of the Space Marines to the high-tech sci-fi lasers of the Eldar, to the unusual electric pulse of the Necrons in their brief appearances. It all has a good deal of meat and punch to make it all feel great. As well, one of the cooler and more minute touches I forgot to mention was how the heads-up display changes depending on the race to better represent their aesthetic. It's minor and completely unnecessary, but appreciated because it makes everything feel more cohesive when you're playing as an army. But I didn't forget just good things. I also forgot to mention that in the campaign, the autosave can be really annoying. It stops the entire world map for a few seconds, which is especially jarring in this one when you're midway through a mission and it happens. Oh, also, I don't know what's going up with the minimap. This is the only way I could play the game that, didn't completely fuck up the display on my computer, so I kind of had to just accept the fact that the minimap is going off the fucking boundary. Also, here's the armor painter I forgot to show last time. And that'll be that. Dawn of War Winter Assault is a beast of an expansion. It has what is in many ways my preferred campaign of the two we talked about so far, introducing its own pair of iconic characters of the series who would appear further in the future, and having some way more interesting level design, and outside of a few levels, some more interesting win conditions even. It doesn't take anything away either. You still get full access to the army painter and skirmish modes once more, and can enjoy those plenty. I've got to mention with skirmish mode 2, you can actually play multiplayer with 7 others to make a massive 8-player experience that can be really hectic and fun. At least I'd imagine it'd be. I've only been able to play with 3 people at once, and one of those people was just fucking around and only really doing it for the sake of joining in what the rest of us were doing. Winter Assault is fantastic, I don't know how else to put it. I genuinely came in expecting not to really care for this one, as it was my least favourite expansion outside of one we'll get to later, but now it's one of my favourites. I'd rank it right up there alongside the original game as a really solid installment and a really solid game. But now we move on to an interesting one. Join me next part for when we tackle the second expansion, Dawn of War Dark Crusade.